They saved a table for 5 at my graduation dinner. But when I walked in, only 4 chairs were pulled out. My mother looked at the empty corner beside the fake plant and said, "Nora, don't start. Just sit there." My brother smiled across the table and added, "Helpers don't need a legacy." Then my father slid a cream-colored envelope toward me. No flowers, no card, no hug. Just my name written across the front in his thick black handwriting. "Nora," he said loud enough for the table beside us to hear, "you're grown now. It's time you understand where you stand." Inside was a 1-page letter signed by my parents, my brother, and his wife. It said I was no longer part of Caldwell's Smokehouse, no longer welcome behind the counter, no longer allowed to use the Caldwell name for any food business. It was my graduation gift. They expected tears. They expected begging. They expected me to break beside the water glasses and steak knives. Instead, I folded the letter, placed it back on the table, and said, "Thank you for finally being honest." My brother laughed. My mother whispered, "Don't make this ugly." But what they didn't know was simple. The county fair had already rejected Caldwell's Smokehouse and chosen my food truck instead. I grew up inside a barbecue restaurant that smelled like hickory smoke, brown sugar, wet aprons, and old family pride. Caldwell's Smokehouse sat on the corner of Maple and 9th in a small Ohio town where people knew your truck, your church, your kids' grades, and your divorce plans before you did. It was not fancy. The booths were red vinyl with cracks along the edges. The menus had sauce stains no one could fully wipe off. The front door had a bell that rang too loudly every time someone walked in. The kitchen floor stayed sticky near the soda station no matter how much bleach we used. But Caldwell's mattered. After Sunday service, families came in still wearing church clothes. After football games, boys with muddy cleats crowded into the booths and ordered too much sweet tea. After funerals, people carried trays of pulled pork home because grief was easier when dinner was handled. My grandfather opened Caldwell's in 1978 with 1 smoker, 3 picnic tables, and a sauce recipe he wrote on the back of a bank envelope. My father inherited the restaurant, my brother inherited the dream, and I inherited the mop bucket. That was the truth no one said out loud. My father, Rick Caldwell, believed a family business only survived when everyone knew their place. Landon's place was beside him. Mine was behind them. When Landon was 12, Dad gave him a black apron with his name stitched across the chest. Landon, white thread, clean pocket, bright letters. He wore it around the restaurant all day like a crown. When I turned 12, Mom handed me an old gray apron from the storage closet. It was too big, bleach-stained and torn near the waist tie. I asked if I could get my name on one too. Mom smiled without even looking up from the register. "Nora, honey, don't be sensitive. It's just an apron." But it was never just an apron. In our family, names went on things that mattered. Landon's name went on aprons, birthday cakes, baseball jackets, and eventually business plans. Mine went on chore lists. Dad took Landon into the smokehouse before sunrise and taught him how to check ribs, stack hickory wood, shake hands with customers, and say, "Good to see you, sir," like he had already inherited the place. I learned how to refill ketchup bottles, wipe booster seats, wrap silverware, scrape gum off the underside of tables, and smile when customers snapped their fingers for extra napkins. Dad called Landon the future. He called me a good helper. For years, I thought helper was a compliment. Then I realized it was a box. Small, quiet, easy to carry, easy to put away. My mother, Carol, was not loud with her cruelty. She did not scream. She did not curse. She did not throw plates or tell me I was worthless. She was softer than that. Sharper, too. Her cruelty wore lipstick pearl earrings and a voice sweet enough to make strangers think she was kind. If someone asked about Landon, her whole face changed. "Landon is learning the business from the ground up," she would say. "His father says he has real leadership in him." If someone asked about me, her smile turned polite. "Nora is still finding herself. Still." That word followed me everywhere. Still studying. Still working shifts. Still figuring things out. Still too sensitive. Still not quite enough. The funny thing was, I knew Caldwell's better than Landon did. I knew which freezer door stuck in July. I knew the Friday regulars by order. Mr. Watkins wanted extra sauce but always pretended he didn't. Mrs. Bell liked her brisket sliced thin because her dentures bothered her. The mailman came in at 2:15 every afternoon and asked what was fresh, even though he ordered the same sandwich every time. I knew when the cornbread was about to run out. I knew which server cried in the walk-in after a bad table. I knew which dishwasher needed cash before payday. I knew how to calm a line, flip a table, stretch a pot of beans, and smile through a dinner rush with sauce on my sleeve and a blister on my heel. But Landon knew how to stand beside Dad in photos. And in my family, that counted more. When customers complimented the peach cobbler, Mom said, "Old family recipe." She never mentioned I had changed the crust. When people said the baked beans tasted better lately, Dad slapped Landon on the shoulder. "The boy's got a hand for flavor," he said. Landon grinned. He never corrected him. I didn't either. That was my first mistake. When you let people take credit for your silence, they start believing your silence belongs to them. After high school, Landon stayed at Caldwell's full-time. Dad acted like that was noble. I enrolled at the community college 30 minutes away and studied hospitality management. Dad acted like I had betrayed him. "College won't teach you smoke," he said one night while counting the register. "No," I said quietly, "but it might teach me how to keep a restaurant open." He looked at me like I had slapped him. "Caldwell's has been open since before you were born. It could still do better." That was the wrong thing to say. His face hardened. "You sound like one of those restaurant rescue shows." Landon laughed from the office doorway. "She takes 2 business classes and thinks she's saving us." Mom, who was sorting receipts, sighed without looking up. "Nora, don't turn everything into a challenge." I wasn't challenging them. I was begging them to see the cracks. The roof leaked over the storage room. The freezer needed replacing. Online reviews had started saying service was slow. Younger families were driving 2 towns over for food trucks, coffee shops, and places with outdoor seating. But Dad heard concern as disrespect. Landon heard ideas as threats. Mom heard truth as bad manners. So I stopped explaining. I went to class in the mornings, worked at Caldwell's in the afternoons, and took evening shifts at Maple Ridge Senior Center 3 nights a week because I needed money for tuition. That senior center changed my life. It was not glamorous. The kitchen had dented pans, old tile, and a dishwasher that sounded like a lawnmower full of forks. The dining room smelled like coffee, clean laundry, and the lemon disinfectant they used on every table. But it was the first place where nobody cared what my last name could do for them. They cared if the soup was warm, if the biscuits were soft, if the food came on time, if someone remembered they couldn't chew raw carrots anymore. The kitchen manager, Mrs. Ellen Brooks, was 70 years old with silver hair, bright red glasses, and the patience of a saint until someone overcooked chicken. She watched me work for 2 weeks before she said, "You've got good hands." I laughed. "For washing dishes?" She pointed a spoon at me. "For food. You listen before you cook." Nobody in my family had ever said anything like that to me. At Caldwell's, food was pride. At Maple Ridge, food was care. Some residents had diabetes. Some couldn't chew well. Some came early because they had no one at home to talk to. Some had children in other states who sent flowers on birthdays but never visited. So I started making food that felt like someone had remembered them. Chicken and rice soft enough for Mrs. Bellamy. Turkey meatloaf with herbs instead of too much salt. Vegetable soup that did not taste like punishment. Banana pudding in little cups with 1 vanilla wafer on top, because Mr. Halpern said 2 wafers were showing off. Mrs. Brooks let me test recipes on Fridays. The first time Mr. Halpern asked for seconds, she looked at me and said, "Write that one down." So I did. Recipes, costs, portion sizes, what people liked, what they left untouched, what made them smile. That notebook became the first place my ideas had a home. Later, with Mrs. Brooks pushing me and my best friend Jessa helping on weekends, I started a tiny food trailer called Nora's Table. It was not much at first. A used white trailer with a serving window that stuck when it rained, a borrowed generator, a folding table, a blue apron with my name stitched across the front. Nora's Table. The first time I put that apron on, I stood in my apartment kitchen and cried. Not because it was expensive. It wasn't. Not because it was perfect. It wasn't. I cried because my name was finally on something I had built. The menu was simple. Pulled chicken bowls, cornbread waffles, peach tea, soft rolls, chicken stew in the fall. Food that tasted like somebody had saved you a seat. At home, nobody asked about it. They only asked if I could cover Saturday. Then Marcy joined the family and made everything worse. Marcy was Landon's wife. She had shiny hair, white nails, and the kind of smile that made every insult sound like advice. She did not cook. She did not serve. She did not know which pipe froze behind the dish sink every winter. But she had a ring light, a Canva account, and the confidence of someone who had never cleaned barbecue sauce off a toddler's shoes. 2 years after marrying Landon, she started calling Caldwell's our brand. Our brand needs a cleaner story, she said. Our brand needs stronger visuals. Our brand needs a next-generation identity. By next generation, she meant Landon. Only Landon. One night after class, I walked into the restaurant office and found Dad, Mom, Landon, and Marcy gathered around the computer. On the screen was a logo mock-up. Black background, white smoke. Two men standing back to back, my father and my brother. Underneath in bold letters, Caldwell and Son Smokehouse. For a second, I thought I had misread it. Then Marcy clicked to the next mock-up. T-shirts, menus, a banner, a social media post. Caldwell and Son, father to son. 3 generations of men, 1 legacy, I said. So that's the new name. The room went quiet. Not surprised quiet. Caught quiet. Dad leaned back in his chair. We're just considering some updates. I pointed at the screen. Caldwell and Son. Marcy gave me the smile she used when she wanted to sound kind and superior at the same time. It's not personal, Nora. It just tells a stronger story. A stronger story, I repeated. Landon crossed his arms. It's the truth. I looked at him. What is that? Dad's passing it down to me. There are moments when a family does not just hurt you. They explain how long they have been planning to. I waited for Dad to say something. He could have said, your sister worked here too. He could have said, the name is not final. He could have said Nora matters. Instead, he rubbed his chin and looked at the screen. Customers like tradition, he said. Tradition. That word had been used to lock me outside every door in my life. Mom sighed from the file cabinet. Nora, don't turn this into a wound. As if wounds appeared because I named them. As if the knife had no responsibility. I asked, where do I fit in? Marcy tilted her head. Honestly, this could free you. You've always seemed uncomfortable here. Landon smirked. Yeah, go make pudding cups at the old folks' home. I looked at my father. He said nothing. That silence hurt more than the insult. 2 weeks before graduation, Marcy posted the first public preview of the rebrand. The photo showed Dad and Landon standing in front of the smoker. Arms crossed, chins lifted. Behind them on the wall was an old framed photo of Grandpa opening the restaurant. I knew the original photo. It had Grandpa, Dad, Mom, Landon, and me. I was 8 in that picture, standing near the counter holding a tray of rolls with both hands. In Marcy's version, I was cropped out. The caption read, Caldwell and Son. Real food, real family, real heirs. I stared at the words until the screen blurred. Real family, real heirs. A cropped photo can be louder than a slap. That night I got a text from Landon. Don't take the post personally. It's branding. Branding. That was what they called erasing me when they wanted it to sound professional. Graduation came at the end of May. I was the first woman in our family to finish college. Not a private university, not a big-name school, just a community college degree paid for with tips, sore feet late nights, and hands that always smelled faintly like onions no matter how much I washed them. But it was mine. I emailed my parents the ceremony details 3 weeks early. Mom replied 2 days later. What time again? Landon and Marcy have a summer menu tasting that afternoon. That was how my family loved me, around Landon's schedule. On graduation morning, I stood outside the gym in my cap and gown, while other families took photos under the banners. Mothers fixed tassels. Fathers carried flowers. Grandparents cried into tissues before the ceremony even started. My parents arrived 7 minutes before the doors closed. Mom wore pearls and a pale blue dress. Dad wore his Easter suit. They hugged me carefully, like they were afraid emotion might wrinkle them. Mom said, look at you. Dad said, proud of you, kiddo. For half a second, those words landed somewhere soft. That is the embarrassing truth about being starved of love. Even crumbs can feel like a meal. Then Mom checked her watch. We'll need to leave right after okay. Landon's supplier is being difficult. There it was. My moment already borrowed. Landon and Marcy did not come. Mrs. Brooks did. She sat in the back row wearing her red glasses and holding grocery store sunflowers wrapped in plastic. Jessa sat beside her and screamed my name so loudly the dean laughed. 2 regulars from the senior center waved paper napkins like flags. When I walked across the stage, my parents clapped politely. They did not stand. Afterward, Mom took 3 photos. In one, my eyes were half closed. In one, Dad was looking at his phone. In the third, Mom said, that's good enough. Good enough. Not beautiful. Not special. Good enough. Then they left. I stood in the parking lot, holding sunflowers from a woman who was not related to me, feeling more seen than I had felt at home in years. That afternoon, while I was still wearing my graduation dress, my phone rang. The caller ID said Denise Hall County Fair Office. Every summer, the county fair was the biggest event in our area. carnival rides, livestock shows, tractor pulls, funnel cakes, school bands, fireworks on Saturday night. Half the town pretending they were only going because the kids begged. For years, Caldwell's had tried to get the featured barbecue vendor spot. For years, they were rejected. Dad always blamed politics. The truth was simpler. Caldwell's was slow, stubborn, expensive to staff, and unwilling to update anything except its pride. That year, without telling my family, I had applied too. Not as Caldwell's, as Nora's Table. I sent a short menu, a service plan, and photos from the senior center pop-ups. No thick proposal, no legal packet, no dramatic pitch, just food prices and a note about wanting to serve meals that felt local, affordable, and welcoming. When Denise called, I stepped behind the gym where it was quiet. "Nora," she said, "we loved your tasting." I stopped breathing. "We'd like Nora's Table to be one of our featured vendors this year." Opening weekend main food row near the music stage. For a moment, the whole world went silent. Then she kept talking. Local press preview, community spotlight, possible fall market partnership. But all I heard was one sentence. They chose me. When I hung up, Mrs. Brooks was standing by the curb with the sunflowers under one arm. "Well," she asked. I whispered the fair picked Nora's Table. Her face opened into a smile. Of course they did. I almost cried again. Not because I was surprised. Because she wasn't. The announcement would go public Saturday morning. Graduation dinner was Friday night. For one foolish hour, I thought about telling my family. I imagined walking into Caldwell's and saying I did something. A real thing. "Can you be proud now?" Then Marcy posted another story. A close-up of the Caldwell and Son logo. Under it, she wrote, "Some people help for a season. Sons carry the legacy." I closed the app. My chest stopped aching and went still. Not numb, clear. Sometimes clarity does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it sounds like a door quietly clicking shut. Friday night, I got ready slowly. I wore a navy dress I had bought on clearance 6 months earlier and saved for graduation. Simple earrings, low heels, hair pinned back. Nothing flashy, nothing begging to be noticed. Before leaving, I placed the county fair email in a folder with my menu and a photo of me serving food from the trailer. Not as ammunition, as a reminder. I was not walking into that dinner empty-handed, even if they had never handed me anything. Millstone Grill was the nicest restaurant in town. White tablecloths, fake candles, steaks that made people lower their voices when they ordered. When I walked in, the hostess looked up. "Reservation." "Caldwell," I said. She checked the screen. "Caldwell and Son." I smiled a little. "That's them." She led me to a table near the fireplace. Dad sat at the head. Mom sat beside him. Landon leaned back in his chair like a man already posing for a plaque. Marcy had her phone on the table camera angled toward my seat. My seat was not really a seat. It was a chair wedged near a plant slightly outside the table's circle. Mom waved lightly. "Nora, honey, there you are. We were worried you'd be late." There were flowers in the center. A small cake near Mom's purse. 4 water glasses already filled. Mine was empty. I sat down. Landon looked at my dress. "Senior center bonus." Marcy laughed too quickly. Mom gave him a look, but not the kind that meant stop. The kind that meant not yet. Dad raised his glass before we ordered. "Well," he said, "we're here to recognize Nora finishing her program." Recognize. Not celebrate. Not honor. Recognize. Like my graduation was a receipt they had to acknowledge. Mom smiled at me. "We really are proud, sweetheart. In our own way." In our own way. Another family phrase that meant, please accept less and call it love. Then Dad nodded toward Landon. My brother reached into his jacket pocket and handed him the envelope. That small movement told me everything. This had been planned, practiced, maybe even enjoyed. Dad placed the envelope in front of me. My name was written across it. Nora. For once they had written my name clearly, only to erase it. "What's this?" I asked. Dad folded his hands. "A clean start." Mom said, "For all of us." Marcy leaned forward, voice soft and fake. "We don't want confusion as the restaurant moves into its next chapter." Landon smiled. "You've always wanted your own path, right?" I touched the edge of the envelope. My hands wanted to shake, so I pressed my thumb hard against the folded napkin in my lap until the feeling passed. For 1 second, I felt 12 again, standing in the storage closet, holding a stained apron with no name. Then I remembered the blue apron hanging in my apartment kitchen. Nora's Table. I opened the envelope. The letter was 1 page. No lawyer. No official stamp. No complicated legal language. Just a family decision typed in a cold, neat font. It said that because I had chosen a separate direction, I would no longer be involved with Caldwell's Smokehouse. or the Caldwell and Son rebrand. It said I was to return my restaurant key. It said I should not present myself as connected to the family business. It said I was not to use the Caldwell name in any food venture. It said they wished me peace, maturity, and independence. At the bottom were 4 signatures: Rick Caldwell, Carol Caldwell, Landon Caldwell, Marcy Caldwell. Marcy had signed me out of a restaurant she had never opened, never scrubbed, and never loved. I read the letter twice, not because I didn't understand, because I wanted to remember the exact shape of the moment. The fireplace crackled beside us. A fork touched a plate somewhere nearby. The server laughed politely at another table. My family watched my face like people waiting for a storm they had paid to see. They wanted tears. They wanted anger. They wanted proof that the door still hurt when they slammed it. I folded the letter once, then again. I set it beside my empty water glass. "Thank you," I said. Marcy blinked. "For what?" "For finally putting it in writing." Landon's smile thinned. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom whispered, "Nora, don't make this ugly." I looked at her. "You handed me a family rejection letter at my graduation dinner." Her eyes dropped. "For the business," Dad said. "No," I said. "For the family. You just used the business because it sounded cleaner." Silence. Landon leaned forward. "Don't twist this. You were never going to run Caldwell's. I never asked to run it. Then what's the problem?" I looked at him for a long second. "The problem is I helped build something you used to pretend I didn't exist." His face hardened. "You worked shifts. That one hurt. Even after all those years, it still found a place to land." Mom nodded gently as if he had said something reasonable. "Nora, your brother carried the responsibility." I almost laughed. Landon carried the title. I carried Trey's. Landon carried the name. I carried the weekend rush. Landon carried Dad's approval. I carried everything that still had to be done when approval was not enough to keep a restaurant alive. I reached for my folder. Marcy noticed first. "What's that?" I placed it on the table. "Something I was going to tell you after graduation." Dad frowned. "If this is about money, it isn't." Landon snorted. "Good. Because Caldwell's isn't funding your little pity trailer." I looked at him. My little pity trailer got selected by the county fair. No one moved. At first, the restaurant around us kept going. Glasses clinked. Music played softly. Someone at the bar laughed. But at our table, all sound disappeared. Dad's hand froze around his wineglass. Mom stared at me. Marcy's phone lowered. Landon's mouth opened then closed. I opened the folder and turned the first page toward them. It was the email from Denise Hall. Nora's table had been chosen as a featured vendor for the county fair. Opening weekend. Main food row. Community spotlight. Press preview. A simple email. No lawsuit. No secret inheritance. No dramatic contract. Just an opportunity my father had wanted for years. Given to the daughter he had just written out. Dad read it slowly. His face changed piece by piece. First confusion. Then recognition. Then something that looked almost like fear. Landon grabbed the page. "This is fake." "It isn't." Marcy leaned in, scanning fast. "They chose you over Caldwell's." I did not answer. I did not have to. Mom whispered, "Nora." There was something in her voice I had wanted since childhood. Astonishment. Need. Maybe even regret. But it had arrived too late and for the wrong reason. Dad cleared his throat. "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. Would it have changed tonight? No one spoke. That was answer enough. Landon shoved the page back. "So what, you came here to embarrass us?" "No," I said. "I came because Mom invited me to my graduation dinner." Marcy's cheeks flushed. "With a folder ready, you brought a letter ready." Her mouth closed. For the first time since she entered our family, Marcy had no polished sentence. Dad reached for the letter they had given me. Maybe we should all take a breath. There it was. The family reset button. The moment when they hurt me loudly, then asked me to calm down quietly. For years I had obeyed that button. I had softened. I had swallowed. I had apologized for reacting to pain I did not cause. Not that night. I slid their letter back across the table. "No," I said. "You were clear." Mom's eyes filled. "We didn't mean you weren't family." I pointed at the signatures. "You wrote it down," Dad said. "That was about business. You made my place in this family conditional on whether I stayed useful." Landon rolled his eyes. "You always talk like you're in some movie." "It's barbecue, Nora. Not a throne." I looked at him. "You're right. It's barbecue. It's smoke in the walls. A leaky roof, tired booths, and customers who came because Grandpa made them feel welcome. That was the legacy. Not your logo. Not your apron. Not Marcy's captions." His face turned red. I kept my voice low. You inherited the building. You didn't inherit the heart. The words landed harder because I did not yell them. Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked down. Marcy whispered, "Unbelievable." I stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. The server appeared, saw our faces, and disappeared again. I picked up my folder. Then I looked at my parents. "I spent years waiting for you to pull out a chair for me," I said. "Tonight you handed me a letter instead. So I'm going to believe you." Mom reached for my hand. "Nora, please." I stepped out back. Not because I hated her, because I finally understood that a last-minute touch was not the same as love. Dad's voice was quiet. "What are you going to do now?" I thought about Mrs. Brooks. Jessa screaming at graduation. The senior center residents waving napkins. The blue apron hanging in my apartment kitchen. "I'm going to work," I said. Then I walked out. Outside, the evening air smelled like rain and cut grass. For a moment, I stood beneath the awning and let myself breathe. My phone buzzed. "Jessa, are you alive?" I typed back, "Very." Then Mrs. Brooks texted, "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Fair announcement. Wear the blue apron, the one with your name on it." I stared at that message until the ache in my chest loosened. My name, not borrowed, not hidden, not written on an envelope meant to remove me, stitched on something I had earned. The next morning, the county fair posted the announcement. By 9:15, my phone was shaking on the counter. People shared it. Former classmates commented. Senior center residents wrote things like, "Best chicken stew in town. Nora feeds people like family should." That one made me sit down. Family should. At 9:42, the local paper called. At 10:10, the church asked if I could cater a fundraiser. At 10:37, Mom texted, "Your father and I saw the announcement. We need to talk." I did not answer. At 10:45, Dad texted, "Proud of you. Call me." Proud. A word that had always been too expensive for them to spend on me. Now it arrived late and discounted. At 11:03, Landon texted, "You know this makes us look bad, right?" That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was honest. Not "I'm sorry." Not "Are you okay?" Not "We hurt you." Just "You made us look bad." 6 weeks later, the county fair opened under a bright July sky. The air smelled like funnel cakes, hay sunscreen, fried onions, and hot pavement. Kids ran past with painted faces. Teenagers carried lemonade cups bigger than their heads. A country band tested microphones near the main stage, and there parked in the featured row was my trailer. Nora's table. White paint, blue lettering, a small logo of a kitchen table with one chair pulled out. Mrs. Brooks had suggested the logo. "That chair means someone is always welcome," she said. I wore the blue apron. Jessa ran the register. 2 culinary students from my program helped plate orders, and I paid them properly because I knew what helping family could become when respect was missing. By noon, the line stretched past the lemonade stand. By 2, we had sold out of peach tea. By 3, a little girl with missing front teeth told me the cornbread waffle was better than pancakes and chicken nuggets combined. I told her that was the highest compliment I had ever received. Around 4, something shifted in the line. People started looking behind me. Whispers moved like wind. I knew before I turned. My family was there. Dad wore a Caldwell's polo. Mom wore sunglasses too big for her face. Landon stood with his arms crossed. Marcy held her phone, but for once she was not recording. They looked different outside their restaurant. Smaller, less certain, like people who had walked onto a stage and realized they did not know their lines. Jessa leaned toward me. "Want me to handle them?" I shook my head. "No, I've got it." They did not get in line at first. They walked straight to the side of the trailer where the county fair staff had set up a small media area for photos. Denise Hall, the fair coordinator, was there with a local reporter named Kelly from the county paper. That was when I understood. They had not come to apologize. They had come to attach themselves. Marcy stepped forward first, smiling that bright fake smile. "Nora," she said loudly, "we are so proud of this little sister brand." Sister brand. My hand tightened around the serving tongs. Dad gave a small, nervous laugh. "What Marcy means is, this is still a Caldwell family success." Landon looked at the reporter and added, "Nora learned everything from our smokehouse. We're happy to support her as part of the Caldwell and Son family." The line went quieter. Not silent yet, but listening. Marcy kept smiling. "We thought it would be beautiful to introduce this as Nora's Table by Caldwell and Son. A modern extension of the family legacy." For a second, the old Nora almost stepped back. The old Nora would have felt embarrassed for them, would have smoothed it over, would have let them take a piece just to avoid a scene. But then I remembered the empty water glass, the chair by the plant, the cropped photo, the envelope. The sentence helpers don't need a legacy. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the side window. The reporter lifted her pen. Denise looked between us, confused. I said, "That's not accurate." Marcy's smile froze. Dad's face tightened. Landon gave me a warning look. "Nora," he said under his breath. "Don't." I looked at him. "Don't what? Make this ugly?" His jaw clenched. The reporter asked, "So Nora's table is not connected to Caldwell and Son?" Before I could answer, Dad stepped in. "It's family. Of course there's a connection." I nodded slowly. There was. Mom's face went pale. Marcy's voice sharpened. "Nora, this is not the time." I reached beneath the counter and pulled out the folded letter. Not dramatically, not waving it, just unfolding one page with clean, steady hands. "This is the letter they gave me at my graduation dinner," I said. "It says I'm no longer involved with Caldwell's Smokehouse or the Caldwell and Son rebrand. It says I should not present myself as connected to the family business. It says I should not use the Caldwell name in any food venture." The fair around us seemed to dim. People in line stopped talking. The reporter stopped writing. Denise's mouth parted slightly. Mrs. Brooks, seated behind the trailer in her folding chair, stood up slowly. Landon's face went red. Marcy whispered, "Are you serious right now?" I looked at her. "You signed it?" That was the first crack. The reporter looked at Marcy. "You signed a letter removing her from the family business." Marcy opened her mouth. No words came. Dad tried to recover. "That was a private family matter." I folded the letter again. "You made it business when you tried to put my trailer under your name." A man in line spoke up. It was Mr. Watkins, a Caldwell's regular, who had eaten at our restaurant every Friday for 20 years. "Wait," he said, looking at Landon. "You told folks those new beans were yours." Landon's face changed. Mr. Watkins pointed toward me. "They were hers." No one answered. Then Mrs. Brooks stepped forward, her red glasses catching the sun. "Those recipes are hers," she said clearly. "That chicken stew, those cornbread waffles, that peach tea. I watched her build them one Friday at a time, while the rest of you were busy calling her a helper." The line went completely silent. Not quiet, silent. Even the reporter lowered her pen for a second. My mother covered her mouth. Dad stared at the ground. Marcy looked at Landon like she was waiting for him to fix it. Landon looked at me with pure anger, but beneath it was panic. "You always had to make us look like villains," he said. I leaned my hands on the counter. "No, Landon. I kept making you look better than you were. That was the problem." The words hung in the summer air. A child dropped a plastic cup somewhere behind the line. No one moved. Dad's voice came low. "Nora, please. We shouldn't do this here. You started it in a restaurant," I said. "You tried to finish it in front of a reporter. I'm just answering the question." Marcy's eyes flicked to the camera hanging from Kelly's neck. "We didn't come here to take anything," she said. I looked at her. "You called it a sister brand. That was just wording." "Branding," I said. "Right." Her face went still. She remembered the text. So did I. Dad stepped closer to the window, no longer performing for the reporter. "Nora, listen. Caldwell's has been struggling. The fair would have helped us. If we present this together, people will see the family is united." There it was. Not love, need. Not apology. Strategy. I asked, "When did you decide we were united?" He looked at the letter in my hand. His shoulders dropped. Mom finally spoke. "Nora, I am sorry." I turned to her. She removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. "I should have said your name more," she whispered. "On menus, in photos, to customers, in our family." That reached me. Not enough to heal everything, but enough to be real. Then Dad said quieter, "Your grandfather would have hated that letter." Landon muttered. "Dad." "No," Dad snapped. It was the first time I had heard him cut Landon off in years. He would have. Landon stepped back like the words had shoved him. The reporter remained still. The line remained silent. Everyone was waiting to see what I would do. For years, I thought my big moment would feel like fire, like shouting, like revenge hot enough to burn the people who burned me. But standing there wearing my own name, I felt something calmer, cleaner. I did not want to destroy them. I did not want to save them either. I wanted to stand where I had built something and not move aside. I folded the letter and placed it under the counter. Then I looked at my family. "I'm not going to post the letter," I said. "I'm not going to hand it to the paper. I'm not going to ruin Caldwell's for sport." Marcy's shoulders loosened with relief. Then I added, "But I'm also not going to let you use my name after you erased it." Dad nodded slowly. Mom cried quietly. Landon looked away. Marcy whispered, So what are we supposed to do? I looked past them at the customers waiting behind the rope, at Mr. Watkins, at the little girl with the missing teeth, at the reporter, at Mrs. Brooks standing with both hands on her hips, like she was ready to fight a whole bloodline with a serving spoon. Then I looked back at my family. You can order, I said, but the line starts back there. Nobody laughed. Nobody clapped. That would have made it too clean. Instead, my father lowered his head. My mother wiped her eyes. Marcy's face burned red. And Landon, the future of Caldwell's Smokehouse, turned around and walked to the back of the line. That was the moment the whole family went silent. Not because I had screamed. Not because I had sued. Not because I had ruined them. Because I had finally stopped making myself smaller to make their story easier to tell. By the end of the fair, Nora's table had sold out 3 days in a row. The county paper ran a photo of me handing a plate to a little boy in a baseball cap. The headline said, "Local graduate brings new flavor to county fair." Not Caldwell's daughter, not Landon's sister, not Rick's girl, local graduate, my own title. The article did not mention the letter. Kelly asked if I wanted to talk about family tension. I said no, not because I was protecting them, because my pain was not their headline anymore. A week later, I went back to Caldwell's Smokehouse. Not to work, not to apologize, not to return, just to pick up an old box of my things from the storage room. Dad had left it near the office door. Inside were 2 notebooks, a chipped mug, and the gray apron I had worn at 12. The stained one, the nameless one. I held it for a moment. Then Dad came out of the kitchen. He looked older than he had at graduation dinner. So did the restaurant. Same red booths, same smoke in the walls, same old photos watching from the past. But something was missing. The Caldwell and Son mock-up was gone from the office wall. Dad saw me looking. "I took it down," he said. I nodded. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Your mother wants to make a new photo wall. Everybody. Your grandfather, us, you, Landon. The real story." The old me would have felt grateful. The new me felt careful. "That's good," I said. His face fell a little. He had expected more. Maybe tears. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe a daughter running back toward the first small sign of repair. But healing is not a switch. It is a door you open slowly after years of being locked out. Dad said, "Nora, I don't know how to fix this." I looked at the gray apron in my hands. "Start by not asking me to make it easy for you." He nodded. For once, he did not defend himself. For once, he did not explain. For once, he let the truth stand in the room without trying to smoke it into something softer. I placed the gray apron on his desk. "I don't need this anymore." Then I picked up my box and walked out. Months passed. Nora's table became more than a fair booth. I kept serving meals at Maple Ridge. I parked the trailer outside the library on Thursdays and near the high school football field on Fridays. I catered church lunches, retirement parties, and one backyard wedding where the bride cried because her grandmother could eat my chicken stew without pain. I was not rich. I was not famous. I still worried about invoices, bad weather food costs, and whether the generator would start. But I was free. Every dollar I earned came with my name attached. Every mistake was mine to fix. Every success was mine to stand in. Mom texted sometimes. At first I answered with 1 sentence, then 2. Eventually we met for coffee. She cried. I did not. Not because I wasn't hurt, because I had cried enough alone. She told me she had mistaken keeping peace for keeping family. I told her peace without fairness is just silence with better manners. She wrote that down on a napkin. That almost made me smile. Dad came by the trailer one cold afternoon in November. He waited until the line was gone and ordered chicken stew. He paid full price, tipped $20, then sat at a picnic table and ate quietly. Before he left, he said, "Your grandfather would have liked this place." I said, "I think so too." That was all. But it was enough for that day. Landon took longer. People like my brother do not lose power all at once. They lose it in small humiliations. A customer asking why Nora left. A review saying Caldwell's felt stuck. A fair vendor asking if he was related to Nora from Nora's table. He hated that most, being recognized through me. Just before Christmas, he showed up outside my apartment. No Marcy, no phone, no smirk. He looked tired. For a second, I saw the boy who used to sneak burnt ends from the kitchen and dare me to eat the spicy ones. Then he spoke. "Dad wants me to apologize." I almost closed the door. But he added, "I don't know how." That stopped me. Not because it was enough, because it was honest. I stood in the doorway. He looked past me at the small kitchen, the stacked containers, the menu drafts taped to the fridge. "I thought if you got a piece of it, there'd be less for me," he said. I answered, "There was never only one piece." He nodded, jaw tight. I know that now. Maybe he did. Maybe he only knew that taking everything had not made him feel as big as he expected. Either way, I did not invite him in. I'm not ready to be close, I said. He swallowed. Okay, but I hope you become better than what you were taught. His eyes flickered. Then he nodded once and left. That was the closest thing to mercy I had in me, and I do not regret saving it carefully. The following spring, I catered a graduation lunch at the same community college where I had walked across the stage. Same gym, same banners, same folding chairs. This time I stood behind a buffet table serving students whose families took too many pictures and cried too loudly and said, "We're proud of you." Like it was the easiest sentence in the world. A young woman in a cap and gown came back for seconds and said, "My dad couldn't come today, but this feels like home." Thank you. I had to turn away for a moment, not because I was sad, because I understood something I wish someone had told me years earlier. Family is not proven by who owns the building. Legacy is not protected by keeping people out. Respect is not a reward parents hand you after strangers finally clap. And dignity is not loud. Sometimes dignity is folding the letter and leaving the table. Sometimes dignity is refusing to let people rename your work after they erased your name. Sometimes dignity is wearing an apron with your own name on it. Sometimes dignity is making food for people who make you feel more seen than blood ever did. My family tried to write me out because they believed legacy was a door only they could open. But I learned legacy can be a table. One you build yourself. One with enough chairs. One where nobody has to earn their name by staying silent. I still have the letter. Not framed. Not displayed. Folded in the back of a kitchen drawer beneath old menus and receipt paper. I do not keep it because it hurts. I keep it because it reminds me of the night I stopped confusing rejection with truth. They wrote that I no longer belonged. They were right. I no longer belonged at a table where love had conditions, where my work counted only when someone else could take credit, where silence was mistaken for permission. I belonged somewhere better. Somewhere I could stand straight. Somewhere I could feed people without starving myself for approval. So if you have ever been the extra chair, the quiet helper, the name left off the sign, remember this? Being erased by the wrong people is not the end of your story. Sometimes it is the first clean page. And sometimes the family that refused to save you a seat has to stand in line outside the life you built without them. Would you have forgiven them after that dinner? Or would you have walked away too?